Today we're going to be doing something rather different. Um, Instead of talking about a specific book in general, or doing a review or ranking characters, we're going to talk about writing in a way. Um, and the main kind of idea here is we're going to be talking about magic systems because they're quite frequent in fantasy, and people have their own takes on what makes a good magic system. And today I'm going to kind of be breaking it down and giving my thoughts and opinions on it. As always, before we get into the video, make sure to like and subscribe if you like this content, and let's get into it. So, in fantasy, a magic system represents the magic that's being used. Kind of self-explanatory. For example, if you've read the Lightbringer series, it's quite obvious what that is. It's the kind of coloured-based magic, or in things like Lord of the Rings, Gandalf's magic, and the magic system is just how that magic is defined. And one way to define magic is to categorize it as hard or soft. And I'm going to go into more detail on what these are, but it's not one or the other, as some people might say. It's kind of a bit along a spectrum. You have hard magic systems at one end, soft at the other, and a magic system will be placed somewhere between those 2 points, depending on how rigid it is and structured, basically. To start off, let's talk about hard magic systems. And these are magic that have more rules, more defined. An example of this would be, for example, Allomancy in the Mistborn series. The reader is aware of all the rules of this magic system. So you know that what the different metals are, and what they do. So then, when one of the characters, for example, take Vin, when she uses this magic, it's not unexpected. The kind of surprise, or the kind of what makes it a good magic system, is the way it's used, not how. If you know what I mean. You're not going to surprise the reader by doing something that the reader hasn't anticipated. Let me phrase that better. So it's more of the reader understand how the magic works. It's the creative ways it's used which make it entertaining to read about. There can be benefits to both of these. A hard magic system is, in my opinion, better used when affecting the narrative, um, which I'll talk about soft magic systems and that in a second. But the negatives of this are some people do say that it means it's limited because magic is supposed to be wondrous and kind of amazing and if you kind of set in stone how the magic works, it doesn't provide that, which I guess I can understand. But I don't mind that. I like how a hard magic system works. If anything, I do prefer them. So if we go to the other side, you've got a soft magic system, and what this is one that's more loose, and kind of basically the complete opposite of a hard magic system. Loose, no real rules, and examples of this are, for example, Gandalf from Lord of the Rings. I know if you read some of the other books, his magic system, his magic is kind of more defined, like whatever. But in Lord of the Rings, you don't understand what Gandalf does what he wants. But this is good because it helps create that sense of wonder and build on. It also adds to kind of the world building because it's new, not only to the characters in the book, so Frodo and Sam and all the hobbits, but it's also new to the reader, and it helps just show the kind of magical aspects of the world and shows how wide it is. And that's the kind of benefits of a soft magic system. But there are some negatives, and it depends how you use them. But I feel when a soft magic system is used to affect the plot, it can really damage the story. Because let's take the idea of foreshadowing. That is the setting up of something that's going to happen later on. You're not telling the reader exactly what's going to happen. There's clues to pick up on that lead in some kind of event or something that plays out later down the line. With a soft magic system, that's kind of taking away those initial clues, because the reader doesn't fully understand how the magic system works. And if that is then used to solve a narrative problem, sometimes it can be alright if the problem is maybe early on in the book, hasn't got a lot of stakes to it. But if you finish your book with the big climax and it's fixed or solved by a magic system that the reader doesn't understand fully, it can kind of feel like kind of disheartening and like not satisfactory. Whereas that's why I was talking about hard magic systems, and I feel that if the reader understands how they work, and it's the creative way they're used to solve the final conflict, or the fight, whatever happens at the end of the book, or just solve the main problem. If the reader is aware of the rules, then it's better. That's how some of the Mistborn stuff works. Mistborn is one of my favorite examples of like the hard magic systems, because you understand how it works and how the magic system plays out, but it's the way it's used which is great. And some of that is not even defined by, it's not tied onto like the magic side. It's like character growth and all these other stuff. For example, some books use both. So take Lord of the Rings, for example. I'm pretty sure you know Lord of the Rings. You've got the soft magic system, which is Gandalf, who, like I said previously, Gandalf does whatever he wants. His magic doesn't directly affect the plot, however, because the plot is to take the ring to Mordor and destroy it. Gandalf doesn't destroy the ring. He doesn't use magic to do anything. He is just helping them get there, and he ends up leaving them and then doing other stuff within the story that's not tied directly to the main characters and the main kind of narrative. Whereas the magic of the ring is a much harder magic system. There are set rules that the reader understands. You know that when you put the ring on, you become invisible, but you also are more are seen by Sauron and his forces. And also, the longer you have the ring, it slows their age, but also it corrupts them and corrupts their mind and makes them more selfish and all those things. And a clear example of that is like Gollum, showing the kind of far side of that. But the reader understands how that works and understands what will happen, so you accept those kind of consequences as it goes. It may not be a positive magic system, because like some of the if using it to go invisible is, I guess, a good thing, but the rest is kind of negative. This uses them both in great ways. One is used to complement the plot, and one is used as part of the plot. And the one that's part of the plot is the hard magic system, where the reader can understand the rules, understand what's going on, and so it doesn't feel kind of loose and kind of unbalanced, which is something I really like. But sometimes people will define them as one or the other, whereas it kind of exists on a spectrum, because Gandalf's magic may be up here in Lord of the Rings, but then when they more define it in other books, it kind of brings it back a bit. So to summarise, we've got hard magic systems. These are more rule-based, and that allows the reader to understand exactly how they work and why they work. A soft magic system is the opposite of that, and it is more loose, and that can kind of create a sense of wonder when the new things happen, and also it lets you kind of have new and interesting things added, and it just it's the magic feels like it's a lot more powerful or on a wider scale. But that also means that the harder magic systems work better when affecting the plot and playing into how the plot is resolved. Whereas if you do that with the softer magic system, it doesn't work as well, because the reader doesn't fully understand why that's allowed to have resolved the ongoing conflict. Some use both. So, for example, Lord of the Rings, they use the Rings magic system as well as Gandalf's, or just the kind of wizard's magic system. And they kind of magic systems exist on a scale, they're not one or the other. you'll find that depending on how outlined the magic system is, it will be somewhere between the two, and it won't be like, you can't categorize them as one or the other, basically. I hope you liked the video, hope you enjoyed. Make sure to like and subscribe and do all the usual stuff. And I will leave a video up here, or either side, for my Mistborn tier list. And I'll see you in the next video. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.